Hello everybody, I'm Bill Rabinowitz along with Joey Kaufman, my beat partner, and we just had an open practice. We actually got to watch all of Ohio State's practice, which is a first for, I think, in years, right?
It's the first since last August, where we
Okay.
got the Big Ten Network comes to Columbus. They do a preseason camp tour, visit all the stops in the Big Ten. I guess in a couple years they're going to have more mileage going out to SC and UCLA. But nonetheless, they move around the Midwest. Today they were in Columbus to watch Ohio State practice, so the rest of the local media got to watch, and we got to gaze our eyeballs at, I think, 12 or 13 Ohio State football practice periods for about 90 minutes.
Yeah, in the previous practices, we've, I think, seen 2 or 3, and it was only basically stretching in some individual drills. So this was the most we've gotten to see. No real surprises. There wasn't 11 on 11. There wasn't any full tackling. So even that was limited. But we saw C.J. Stroud throw. We saw Travion Henderson run. We saw the defense run around. I mean, it was at least productive, what we saw.
Yeah, we got to see a little bit of groupings. I think that's always the interesting part. Normally when we're watching practice, we're seeing just the position groups and how the safeties might rotate through, how defensive linemen might rotate through. But we got to see, I guess, some 7-on-7s and the back end of the defense. To me, just watching who's available right now, I think the most pressing issue for the Buckeyes is they just don't have a lot of guys at corner. That was a position of really they were really thin on depth there going into camp. Only 6 returning scholarship cornerbacks, and Cam Brown is on a pitch count. He's getting limited reps. He's been banged up over the last couple of years, and a couple other guys like Jordan Hancock, he's been limited. And Ryan Day said it's not a long-term issue, but you can really see when they put in the second-team defense, you have walk-ons in there. I think they're not as deep as they would like to be. And Jim Knowles mentioned earlier in the week, too, Cam Martinez is one of the guys. They're cross-training at safety, so they're trying to be creative and help out the corner spot. But if the top line of their depth chart certainly is feeling it right now with Cam Brown and Jordan Hancock being either limited or in Hancock's case out altogether.
Right. I mean, Cam Martinez is one guy. Lathan Ransom's another guy. You talk about guys coming off injuries. He had a pretty gruesome injury in the Rose Bowl, broke his leg. He's back and looks really good. I mean, he doesn't look like a guy coming off a broken leg. Now, he's, again, being brought along slowly, but he's another guy that could see time at cornerback if need be, because I think they want guys like him on the field. The other thing, and I asked Ryan Day this in his press conference, we're only a week into camp, and there really are not a lot of position battles, at least for starting jobs, that are up for grabs. I mean, if you were to go through a depth chart, it's tricky because the defensive line, they're going to rotate so many guys, it doesn't really matter who's going to start. But we know the back five of the secondary is going to be at safety. It's going to be Ronnie Hickman and Josh Proctor and Tanner McAllister and Denzel Burke, and if healthy, Cam Brown. We know that. And linebacker, Jim Knowles said the other day that it's Steele Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg have solidified their spots. So that's the defense.
That's pretty much. I mean, it's really just the front four, and that's a position group where they're going to rotate a ton anyway. I do think it'll be interesting to see who eventually emerges out of that group. I did write down their first team defensive line today. They started off with, I got it somewhere. This is scintillating content, I know, for you. But it looked like Zach Harrison was in that first group, and JT Tuimoloau. So that's who they have at the defensive end spot. But it's one drill, and they'll rotate Jack Sawyer, Javonte Jean-Baptiste a lot at the ends. Mike Hall was getting some first-team reps. Teron Vincent working in there.
Those are the other two.
They are going to rotate a lot, and even when Jim Knowles was talking about that on Wednesday, he thought it didn't seem to be a real point of emphasis who's going to get the line up first, the defensive line, because they're going to keep them moving consistently.
Yeah. I mean, we could probably name 10 or 12 defensive linemen that are going to be in the rotation. I mean, just the defensive end, JT, Jack Sawyer, Zach Harrison, Javonte, Tyler Friday coming back from an ACL. I think we're leaving out a couple too. But, interior defensive line, Teron Vincent, Mike Hall, Tyleek Williams. Jerron Cage, yeah, is like a 12th year guy. I mean, they've got tons of guys. And like you said, it doesn't really matter who's going to start because they're going to just rotate guys through. And you figure by the fourth quarter of games, they're going to be fresh while the offenses are not. And so I could see them just kind of wearing down offenses.
I think it's what they want to be able to rotate guys, because even some of their defensive ends, they have a little different skill set. I think you want somebody like Jack Sawyer in there when it's 3rd and long, and you can have him tee off on a quarterback. And maybe if it's 3rd and short at the 10-yard line, you want to put maybe a bigger defensive end, or maybe somebody who's probably doesn't have maybe the get off that Jack does, but they're maybe a little bigger and they're more like a defensive tackle and is going to be able to hold their weight on the edge a little more, and doesn't have his Jack's finesse to get around the end as much. So that's one advantage they do have with having so much depth on the defensive line. It's I think probably their deepest group they've had in several years.
Yeah, and then you look at the offense, and obviously C.J. Stroud is the starter. Last year at this time, we didn't know that. We thought that. We were pretty sure it was going to be C.J. Stroud, but it had not been announced yet. The offensive line, we know what it's going to be. It's going to be Paris Johnson Jr. at left tackle, and Donovan Jackson left guard, Luke Whippler at center, Matthew Jones at right guard, and DeJuan Jones at right tackle. We know that's, barring injury, that's what it's going to be. Running backs will be Travion Henderson, backed up by Mayan Williams and Evan Pryor. Wide receivers, Jackson Smith and Jigba. And that's the only one we know for sure, but I would assume Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka and Julian Fleming. And
Julian Fleming was lined up with the first team today opposite Marvin Harrison. It seems like they could rotate more at that outside receiver spot than they have in the last couple of years, because especially last season you had Chris Olave entrenched and you had Garrett Wilson entrenched. You don't take those guys off the field unless they are hurt or you're up big. But this year with a lot of first-time starters, it seems like maybe they could have some more movement on the outside.
We should mention Cam Babb. We did not see him today, really. He's tweaked something. That was the word that Ryan Day used. He said it's not serious. It should be just a couple days before he's back. But, Cam Brown has had 4 ACLs. He really has not played since his high school days in 2017. So anytime you hear tweak or whatever with Cam, but I talked to him coming off the field, he seems fine. I mean, I don't think it's an issue, but it's something to at least keep an eye on.
He was going to get an ice bath.
They all are. Have you done that? Has anyone done that? I couldn't imagine.
It's warm out here, so I could go for
about
one.
2 seconds. It would have been nice after that. I don't know. So that's, to me, that was the take that I got from watching today, and even Ryan Day's press conferences. You're a week into camp, and it almost feels like it's just a matter of just regular kind of improving it. It's not a matter of who's going to start at left tackle, who's going to start at quarterback, who's going to start. It's just getting better as a team, and that's a pretty good place to be if you're Ohio State.
It's a little bit more like an NFL training camp, where I think maybe you're trying to figure out the fringes of your roster. You have some returning veterans at key positions. I think that's a little bit more the vibe. And it's fortunate for Ohio State because they're going to have a scrimmage on Saturday, and after the scrimmage, you can start to look ahead, I think, to Notre Dame a little more. Obviously, a huge season opener out of the gate. It's going to be their first top 10 matchup they've played in week 1 in over 30 years. So that's a huge game with college football playoff implications. You'd like to be able to get into some game prep stuff. So I think for them, it helps that you don't have a huge position battle on your first team offense that you're really trying to work through. It's really, maybe you're trying to fine tune your receiver rotation, maybe the backup running spot, maybe the backup left tackle. But as in terms of your first 11 that you put out there, I think you largely feel pretty good. And tight end is something they're still working through too. But Cade Stover, I thought, looked pretty comfortable out there today, actually, because he was not somebody, speaking of tight end, he was still going back and forth between offense and defense in spring practice, playing some linebacker like he did in the Rose Bowl, and then eventually later in spring made the switch back to tight end, look permanent. But he had a nice catch where C.J. Stroud kind of lofted a soft touch ball along the sidelines, and he had a smaller corner on him, but it still looked smooth and clean. It didn't look clunky. I think you're looking for how he moves out there, and he seems to have some good fluidity at tight end.
Yeah, we're grateful we got to watch today's practice. That was a little bit unexpected to be able to watch the whole thing. We're not going to be allowed here on Saturday for the scrimmage. They're not stupid. Let's let them watch Thursday with the Big Ten Network here. Saturday when we have actual scrimmage, no.
If we did get to watch the scrimmage and record a podcast like this, it would have great viewership in South Bend. I bet the coaching staff at Notre Dame and the Notre Dame fans would be very interested in getting a scouting report. But I think Ohio State fans would be too, I assume. But that's basically why we maybe don't get to see as much this time of year.
They never let us watch the scrimmages. I can assure you that. It's been, at least it's been not since Urban Meyer took over, that's for sure. Well, I think, we've covered, to mix analogies here, we've covered all the bases with this football team for now.
We've gone sideline to sideline.
There we go. That's a better one. That's why Joey's here.
Yeah.
So anyway, appreciate you watching. Follow us for future updates. We'll be doing this regularly, and thank you again.